What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro v Pro. Very fun episode recapping the Olympics and then talking the Wyndham Championship. Also, some interesting news in the golf world about Philadelphia Cricket Club. So, lots to get to. Should be a very fun final week of the regular season here on the PGA Tour. How excited are you for this, Justin?
This is my favorite week of the year because this is the tournament that I won the 200 single entry for 50,000 a few years ago. So I'm going to refer this to Alex Smalley week forever, just because he's the one that did it. And so I just went ahead and started my lineup this week with Alex Smalley.
That's one way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
How much of that in your mind is you thinking that Alex Smalley is going to be a great play again versus just feeling like you have to start it that way for the vibes?
I think it's actually kind of 50-50. Like everybody would probably immediately go, that's a vibes deal. He's trended better. People that don't know the backstory, I played U.S. Open sectionals with Alex Smalley the year that I should have got through and played in the U.S. Open. We battled it out. Great. And he was still playing at Duke. And I was like, man, this kid is like the stories you've told about Grayson Murray and about some of these guys that you just know are different. That's how I felt about him. I knew he was a member here. We came back. He was like super low owned and super cheap. And I was like, man, these guys have no idea. And to be honest, like he started on the back nine. It was a double T. It was like 8-man playoff, but he birdied like his last 6 in a row or something crazy like that. That kind of gave me the cushion to win. But no, it's a little bit of both. I think it's a home course. He's starting to trend better. He's had a rough year. I think he's an Austin Eckroat to me, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like he's that kind of talent. He just has kind of fell in a little slump, and coming home, I think, often does you a lot of good. And so I think it's kind of a both, right? It's a vibe thing, and then a 7,100, sub 5% play.
Exact same price as Austin Eckroat too. Let's put a pin in the Eckroat Smalley conversation, though. Let's recap some of the Olympics because I thought it was pretty fantastic golf. Honestly, I've got 2 big takeaways. Number one, I think partially because of how strong this leaderboard is, but also just because of the way we saw how much it mattered to these guys. My first take is that I don't know if we're there yet, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I think we're going to look at gold medals in the same way we look at major championships. And then the second major observation I had was that is a freaking phenomenal golf course.
So I would switch those and say that golf course is maybe deserves to host a major championship every year, right? Like, I mean, like it is an unbelievable. Not one skill set dominates the other skill set. The leaderboard was unbelievable.
A lot of high leverage shots. And then the other thing I'd say is like, we've seen a number of golf courses. We see a lot of them on tour that have a lot of water. I think that course uses the water in a way that we don't really see very often on the PGA Tour. And it's just a spectacular design. I think the perfect example is on both number 1 and number 18, the shape of the fairway and the way, it makes you play like away from a bunker. But then if you're going away from the bunker, you're playing towards the water. You get those like 2 different landing areas where you have, width early on. So maybe you dial back with a 3-iron or a 3-wood for some of the shorter guys, or you have to then take it over the bunker on the right, go further with driver, but then the water comes in even further. So all around, I just think it's a spectacularly designed golf course. And the other really cool thing about it is, as we saw at the Ryder Cup, like you can bring that rough up and make that extra challenging, and then the golf course as a whole becomes really difficult.
Could you imagine if they didn't get all that rain and if that place would have played a little bit firm?
Mm-hmm.
Man, what a golf course. If you get that place just – I'm not talking like U.S. Open rock hard, just a little firm. I mean, you're talking about high leverage shots. We're talking about high leverage shots on par 3s with soft greens from 165 yards, 8, 9 irons. Like, we're not talking about 4-iron high leverage shots. So, like, if we could get that place firm, we were just talking about, like, I could get up early and watch golf at that place every day because every shot is so intriguing. You had to hit so many shots. As far as the gold medal stuff, like, we've got to find a better format to get all the best players in the world there. I know it's not going to happen, but I also would like to see it become maybe a dual gold medal or a dual medal event for a team and individual format, not just an individual. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how to get there. I don't know the right. I mean, I'm going to play a mid-am event in 3 weeks in Vegas. It's a state mid-am, really cool. It's 4 guys. You take the 3 best scores every day for 3 days, but they have an individual champion and a team champion. Everybody gets world amateur golf ranking points. I'd like to see them move kind of more to that format, but I don't know if, like, I don't even know the qualifying criteria. Like, why was Siwoo not playing? Like, some of these guys that, like, I don't know how the teams are chosen and how everybody gets in.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be take the top 150 in the world or something like that. And if a country has 30, great. If a country has 0, too bad. They should have had more guys in the top 150. But if we went that route, then we'd hear why this is unfair for the live guys because their official world golf rankings points are down. And I really don't want to have that conversation more than we already have to have it throughout the year. Before we talk about more about potential Olympic formats, though, one last thing I want to say about the course. I was watching at my aunt and uncle's house, and my uncle made, an observation that I think his exact words were like, "It's crazy that these scores are so low. This course doesn't seem easy." And it reminded me of like a really interesting distinction, I think, in golf course design, where there's a major difference between easy and scoreable. And that golf course is scoreable, but it demands really good shots to be scoreable. And it still penalizes the bad shots. And I think that's like the major distinction where you have some courses on tour. Detroit Golf Club, for example, is a recent one. TPC Deer Run, I think, is another where you do have the same scoreability, but there's far less penalizing bad shots, or even just shots that force you to play away from pins more, things of that nature. So scoreable, yes, but still quite difficult.
Yeah, I would even throw this week's golf course into the same bracket, right? Well, I mean, as far as like what they just played is, it's got some, you can make a lot of birdies, but you better hit it and play. If you don't hit it and play, you can also make a bunch of bogeys. And I think Schauffele showed that on Sunday, right? As he couldn't hit it in the fairway, and therefore he played terrible. I mean, that was really the bottom line.
Yeah, 2.66 bogeys or worse per round here at the Wyndham Championship. We will look at those numbers some more at the end of the show when we build our underdog play of the week. Going back, though, to the Olympic format, one thing I will push back on is I actually do think it should just be regular medal play. The whole idea of the Olympics is to kind of say, we've got these skills, we've got these games, these sports. Who's the best at it? And golf is an individual sport. So when you're testing who's the best, who is the gold medal winner, I think it should just be about the sport itself and test the,
Yeah, but swimming, track and field, all that, they have all these relays and team events where the fastest guy gets rewarded for being the fastest guy. So I don't want to take that away, but they also get rewarded for having the best team. And the teams go deeper, right? You have the 4x1, 4x4. You even have the mixed, which I think is a really cool format as well. But so there's so many options to just do both. I agree that I don't want to take away the individual. I just think that there should be a team aspect as well.
Yeah, I mean the obvious counter to that is whether it's track or swimming. It's like the actual events there take 5 minutes at a time at the very, very most. Most are like, some of them are 30 seconds. Some of the sprints are 10 seconds. How are you going to do a golf? You can't do 5 different golf events unless you're doing it across 5 weeks, or maybe you could do it in 3 weeks or something. But that's just not how the Olympics are. So I don't know how you would expand it other than.
Yeah, and I don't know if you just include it into the same, let's say that you only have 2 golfers that qualify, then you don't qualify for the team event, right? You have to have at least 3, and we're taking the best 3 scores over all the rounds, and that's what we're doing. And if you don't have that many golfers there, then it has to coincide. I agree. I haven't looked at it enough to know the best format, in my opinion, but I just think there is a way to figure that out, of a way to get it done, right? I mean, it just seems like there should be both.
I think the other idea is to just make it like the U.S. Amateur, where you start with stroke play, the stroke play cuts it down to match play, and then you go from there for the gold medal. And I think one advantage there to doing match play in the Olympics relative to match play on the PGA Tour is one of the major complaints about the World Golf Championship match play event every year was that nobody cares about the third place match. Nobody does. If there's a bronze medal, now maybe people actually will care about it. At least the players would then care about it. So in that regard, I think match play would make a lot of sense in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think there's arguments for all of it, right? I mean, the best player won the gold medal this week, so it's hard to argue with what they're doing. I just the team aspect is intriguing to me because it doesn't happen often, especially at that level. And they're not doing it for money, right? It's a strictly pride, and there's got to be a way to make this a team event and an individual event together.
Maybe what you do is you have the stroke play tournament that's all the best players in the world, and then you have another, like maybe it's 4 days, 4 different types of events. Every one of them is just a one-day thing. But now you're no longer talking about the best players in the world, the PGA Tour players. Now maybe you're talking about the best amateurs in the world or something along those lines where, maybe the first day is an alternate shot team thing. And then the second day is alternate shot or best ball, but now it's co-ed. Things of that nature where you're bringing in other players. Because I don't think the PGA Tour guys they're not going to take 2 weeks out of the season. They're only going to take 1. And then number 2 is now you're still letting them play and compete the way they're used to competing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, whether it coincides or it's 2 separate events, I don't know the right answer, and I haven't looked at it enough to figure out how it would work. I mean, I don't know how many players from each country. Does everybody had just 1 or 2, right? I mean, I know the U.S. had 4. How many countries had 4?
Only the U.S. So basically, like you could have up to 4 if you had 4 guys in the top 15 of the official World Golf rankings. I don't know how they were picked beyond that, but as I said earlier, like I think an easier way to do it is just however many guys you have in the top 150 of the world rankings, that's how many get in.
And then, did you notice all the bitching about Wyndham Clark after day 1, and nobody wanted to talk about how he played day 2, 3, or 4?
Yeah, he sure helped my DraftKings lineup day 2, 3, and 4. I'll tell you that much. And we played him pretty much every single day in Showdown week or day 2, 3, and 4. So it was a fun week.
Everybody wanted to complain about, he doesn't deserve to be there, blah blah blah. He played bad, but he sure played good the last 3 days.
Yeah, he really did. All right, let's get into the Wyndham Championship. Couple big things this week. So number 1, we have a very unique course fit model, another strong one. It's not.
You got me baffled.
What'd you say?
You got me baffled.
It's not that different from the 3M Open course fit model. By the way, we have an 81% decline on predictive value of driving distance. So probably the least predictive we have seen distance in any event this season, coupled with a 39% increase in driving accuracy, 18% boost for approach play, 9% boost for around the green, and then 30% decline in the value of putting. So yeah, I posed the question on Twitter about the top 3 in our strokes gained driving accuracy metric. So before I give those 3, Justin, do you want to give any more guesses one of the hints, not for the guy who's in first, but the guy who's in second, I think is a surprise I think will be a surprise to almost everybody because he's known as a bomber. He's known as a bomber, not somebody accurate, but remember our strokes gained driving accuracy metric accounts for how long a guy is and doesn't penalize him for being long the way percentage of fairways hit does. So this is a guy who, like Rory, like Bryson DeChambeau, yes, he's long, but he's every bit as impressive with his accuracy off the tee. In fact, in his case, he's even more impressive with his accuracy. This guy gains just over a quarter of a stroke per round with his distance off the tee, which is good for, top 10% in this field, but then gains over half a stroke per round with his accuracy off the tee, which is second best in the field. So any guesses from you?
So for nobody that saw, my first guess was Spieth because I was just trying to think of a popular guy outside of the box that I think drives it better than anybody gives him credit for.
Yep.
Man, I mean, I could go down a list of all of this because there's a lot of guys that I think could fit this category. Min-Woo Lee, Cam Davis, but I'm going to go, if I had to give one guess, I think it would be Maverick McNeely.
It's not McNeely. He gains just under a quarter of a stroke. One of the guys that I would have guessed prior to actually seeing the data is Keith Mitchell. Mitchell's somebody who, like Rory,
that was too obvious, though. I literally didn't guess him because him and Keegan Bradley, I didn't guess because I felt like that was too obvious with what we talk about on this show.
Mitchell, by the way, had gained strokes off the tee in every single event except he lost 0.15 at the Rocket Mortgage, but we're going all the way back to last season in November. He had still gained off the tee in every single event except one, and then he went to the 3M Open. He lost almost a full stroke per round driving, a couple just really, really, really wayward drives, very out of character from him. But because of that, because of, not just the fact that he was missing a lot, and he was missing a lot. He really didn't hit many fairways, didn't hit many drives where he wanted to, period. But it wasn't just the frequency with which he missed, it was that he kept missing in the place that you can't miss. He kept making the big mistake off the tee. So his strokes gained driving accuracy estimate this week is a lot lower than usually, is only at 0.1 gain per round. Usually it's around 0.3 to 0.4. But that still wouldn't be as high as these top three. So three guys over half a stroke per round against this field driving accuracy. Any more guesses before you want me to just say the top three?
No, I mean, I don't I at this point you're just kind of, for me, guessing in the wind. Min-Woo Lee's a bomber, right? Cam Young's a bomber, which I know is wrong. I don't really know what Batia is. Cam Davis is a bomber.
You know who I was surprised nobody guessed? Siwoo Kim.
Yeah, but
no one guessed Siwoo Kim, and Siwoo's at 0.45, so would have been a really good guess if anyone guessed him. Christian Bezadenhout, another guy.
You told me that it was somebody off the wall, though.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But not everyone else would have known that Siwoo has been as accurate as he has been. Number 3 is Doug Ghim. I don't think Doug Ghim is a huge surprise. Loses 0.06 per round with distance per week. He's just been like this fantastic accuracy guy, gaining over half a stroke per round in both driving accuracy and approach play to this field. So somebody we will have to talk about this week. He has a positive GPP score right now, but it's close because as well as he projects, he's at almost 15% single entry ownership at the moment. I have a feeling that could go up. And if it does go up to 20%, that GPP score could flip. Number 1, I'm going to go to number 1, skip over number 2, Carson Young. Another guy, not necessarily a surprise in the sense that he's not a bomber, loses 0.11 per round with his distance, but gains 0.56. The problem with Carson Young from a course fit perspective is that is the only skill set that he has been able to rely on whatsoever. The rest of his game has been volatile to say the least, but there have also been just consistently poor aspects of his game. Like you better not ask him to gain with his short game because it's just not going to happen. He has spiked at times with his approach play and he has spiked at times with his putting, which is why he does have access to a ceiling, especially in a week where he should be giving himself a ton of chances with his irons based on his driving accuracy. But the number 2 guy in strokes gained driving accuracy,
Taylor Moore?
Nope, Johnny Vegas, our 3M Open champion. By the way, one of the reasons why we were so high on Johnny Vegas at the 3M Open, another instance where accuracy off the tee was far more impactful and predictive in the course fit model than distance, was because of his accuracy off the tee. So this isn't a case of like, oh, he drove the ball extremely well last time we saw him, so now we're projecting to be great. That was already one of his absolute best skill sets. And I think one of the coolest things about that, he's not a guy who hits a ton of fairways. He's in the mid 40s in percentage of fairways hit. And I think going into that week, he was probably in the 50s, maybe even 60s. Because accuracy was so much more predictive than distance, we actually then saw him hit a ton of fairways, which kind of gets to the whole idea of this course fit model and why we do things in a predictive way, not a descriptive way. Basically said, hey, the fact that he is so accurate off the tee, it means he makes good decisions off the tee, whether to hit driver, when to be aggressive with driver and when to dial back to a 3-wood or a long iron. But then also it tells us about missing in the right spot, and maybe on that golf course, the right spot, because the rough was not like super difficult, but because it was a little bit tough that week, the right spot was the fairway and not, just making sure you avoid the bunker on the right, even if you're in the left rough. It was, hey, you got to hit fairways. And that's what he went out there and did. And was a fantastic performance all around. So it's very cool to see him popping once again in that regard. And we're going to have to talk Johnny Vegas, I think, more on this show, because you don't like to play guys off a win. I do. He's low owned again because of that. So we're going to have a Vegas discussion for sure.
So do you think that he is low owned because he won, or he was low owned when he won.
Mm-hmm.
He's low owned after he won. I don't think that the correlation, I don't think that if he finished 5th, he'd be more owned than since he won. I think he's low owned because the people just don't have any interest in playing him. They don't believe in his golf. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I don't think this is one of the few times I don't believe the winning is a correlation to the low owned.
So the reason why I do is because that was his 3rd straight week of just phenomenal ball striking. So if he had finished 5th because he gained 2.5 strokes per round putting and his iron play wasn't great, he chipped in a couple times, then I think you'd be right. But at the Rocket Mortgage, he gained 1.7 per round ball striking, so off the tee plus approach, both were very good. At the John Deere, once again, he gained 1.7. This time it was his off the tee play that gained over a stroke, but still gained over half a stroke per round with his irons. And then at the 3M Open, gained 3/4 of a stroke per round off the tee and almost 1.5 per round with his irons. So people love ball striking and they love iron play, which it's red hot right now for Vegas. So I absolutely do think that he would be 15, pushing 20% if he finished 3rd and had the same ball striking stats.
What? I don't even know what his price is.
It's the same. Oh, it's exactly $8,000. So the only guy who's like significantly more popular, it looks like, in that range is going to be Kurt Kitayama at 7,900. We have the two projected almost neck and neck. Very similar strokes gain profiles, by the way, as well. So Vegas gains over 1/4 of a stroke per round with distance, over half a stroke per round with his driving accuracy, and then about half a stroke per round with his irons. Kitayama is just below him in both distance and driving accuracy, and then about 0.1 better with his irons, gaining 0.6 per round. So very similar players, honestly. And
so
I think they'd be like basically identically owned if not for the fact that Vegas won.
That's interesting because neither of them come to mind, right? For me, that like the guy in that range that comes to mind for me is Harris English. Like at a golf course like this, it just fits. So do you have any value? And this is just being devil's advocate because I don't know that, and we've never talked about this. Do you have any value of grass types? Vegas going from an all bank, it's an all bank grass golf course to an all, or bluegrass rough or whatever it is, rye rough. to a all Bermuda course. Do you have any value in any of that?
Not really. I think we've discussed this before. I find grass type splits really dangerous to try and model in because of the way the PGA Tour schedule works. So, for example, the Florida swing. When you go to the Florida swing, you're going to play Bermuda week in and week out. Let's say a guy just is really battling his swing, or he's battling his alignment, putting, this or that. Any of a million different things could be going wrong with his game. And for that month, he plays really poorly. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he's on Bermuda. He's just struggling with something in his game. And now for the next 2-3 years, his Bermuda splits are going to look terrible because he had this like really bad month. It has nothing to do with Bermuda. It's nothing to do with the grass type. So the way the PGA Tour schedule just sets up, and the way they travel from one place to the next, and there are a lot of very similar grass types for 3 weeks at a time. You go out west and you play a lot of Poe. I really, really hesitate to bring those in. If you have like specific instances where there's a reason why this guy might struggle with Bermuda, and he has struggled every year on Bermuda dating back like the last 7 years, then maybe I'll listen to it. But I'm never going to try to model that in. I can say we do have Bermuda splits on the splits tool. So if you do think there's something particular about Bermuda that would make Vegas struggle, we can check that out.
No, I didn't really mean that necessarily against Vegas. It was more in favor of a guy like Keith Mitchell, a guy that is known to see more success on the greens on Bermuda than he has on bent prior to. And it may not even be backed up by stats, so to speak, but like when Keith Mitchell became Killer Keith, right? It was because of his putting on Bermuda greens, and it just rolled, and we just knew that. And was he just putting better then, or was it a real thing that he actually reads Bermuda greens better? The same thing to me, right? If I have Harris English, who I believe is a better from Georgia Bermuda guy, grew up on Bermuda, or Johnny Vegas. By the way, I love Johnny Vegas this week. So you're getting me on a week that I'm literally playing devil's advocate because I'm a big fan of the way he's playing. I think that he's one that the win last week, it affects him, but it doesn't affect the way he's going to play this week. The week off helped him, in my opinion. But Harris English to me is on Bermuda really good and a lot better.
So I've got some stats for you here, because I think if you have like a hypothesis about how somebody is going to favor one type of grass type versus the other, it at least helps with the analysis, but it doesn't always bore itself out. So Harris English baseline 0.68 strokes gained per round on Bermuda, 0.58. So actually a tenth of a stroke worse on Bermuda than his baseline. Keith Mitchell, same thing, 0.64 baseline, 0.48 on Bermuda, goes up to 0.86 on bent/Poe. I don't think like there's anything to that. Personally, I'm not going to look at that and say, oh, I really want to target Mitchell on bent and Poe. I think it's just mostly noise around those two. I'm not going to take anything from it, but I do think it's interesting that just because you have like a sense that a guy is better on a certain grass type doesn't always mean it's going to bear itself out in the data.
Yeah, and it's usually a chipping and putting thing. A little bit of rough thing too, right? The Bermuda rough is, if you came down here and played 3 rounds with me, you would struggle out of the rough here, probably judging lies a little bit for the first couple of days, just because we don't do the same thing every day. So it was not, it's just an overall feel of what do you do all the time? What have you grown up doing, or what have you, developed college and playing doing? And I mean, where Vegas play, I mean, I think he played at Texas. It's Bermuda as Bermuda gets, right? I wasn't targeting him. I'm just saying in general, you get these feels.
So that I will agree with 100%. I absolutely think there's a difference in chipping out of different lies. The contact type is so different. The mechanics of chipping is so different on the different grass types. So for example, like I'm used to bent grass, And on the really tight lies that I get in the Pennsylvania area, especially when it's firm, open the club face, you use the bounce of the club, and you can just kind of throw the club into the ground, right? And just use the bounce, and it works that way. Then you get on Bermuda, and if you try the same thing, you're just going to go underneath the ball. The ball's not going to go anywhere. So you have to change the way you're making contact. That is a big difference. Which is why if we are going to look at these splits, I like to do it the way that Josh has it set up on our splits tool, where it's looking at overall strokes gained on the grass types. It's not just looking at strokes gained putting on Bermuda for Keith Mitchell versus strokes gained putting on Ben. We're looking at the overall strokes gained in those events. I think it's a much better way to look at it, but still, I don't personally find much value at all in those splits. I think there are absolutely going to be times and instances where the difference for a player is meaningful and it's real and it's going to continue. But I think far more often, the difference is just born out of variance. And if you're looking at it, you're far more likely to end up being pushed in the wrong direction. So because I think it's dangerous, I don't look at it at all, because I don't feel like I'm going to be able to determine when it's real versus when it's fake. And it's just a lot easier than to not look at it at all.
No, yeah. I mean, I agree to a point, right? I mean, it's crazy. We were talking about McNeely and Vegas together. That's who I've matched up on my book, right? It's -110 each side, McNeely and Vegas. I'm going to lean towards guys like Vegas. I think there's going to be some value in having the course fit model this week. I think it's just a little bit better this week than we generally just look at, hey, who hits it the farthest, who drives it the best. I think there's a little bit more to it this week.
We've definitely found, that our best weeks are in the weeks when the course fit model is either extreme or counterintuitive. In fact, I think the thing that has stood out the most, like when we have had the most success, it has been when around the green play is far more predictive than most would think. That was true at the 3M Open. It was true at Craig Ranch. It's not necessarily, super true this week. It's only a 9% boost, but again, we have a 40% boost in driving accuracy, an 18% boost in approach play, and then a big giant decrease on both distance and putting. So it is certainly a unique course fit model, and that can help us out. And one way that I think it is helping us out is when you take a skill that is so often like a separator between the best in the field and the middle of the field, or even towards the bottom of the field, like distance, and you totally mute its predictive value. One thing it does is it brings the best strokes gain projections down towards some of the middle of the pack. So for example, first place in our expected strokes gain this week, Sung Jae Im, the most expensive player, certainly going to be one of the most popular players. We've got him at 1.31, but there's very little separation between he and a lot of the cheaper guys. Siwoo Kim is 1.17, Brian Harmon 1.21. We have Ryan Bezadenhout at 1.09 and 1.14. We have Kitayama at 1.07. So when you have so many guys who are that close to the top, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pay all of that money into that much ownership when you can get somebody who's going to finish in the top 5, in the top 10, close to as often for far less money and far less ownership. So in that regard, I think this is definitely a week that sets up well for us. And to that point, we have a lot of very strong GPP scores at the top, at least as of now, after this first run of ownership.
So when you read the course fit model, there was one name that came to mind, and I immediately looked up his odds, 91-1. Do you have any guess who that would be, knowing my background and who I'm always a fan of? I mean, it's like a guy that hits his irons awesome. Maybe he's not driving it as far as he used to. Doesn't putt very well.
Oh, man. Who could this be?
But he can win.
That last statement makes me think you're going to say Taylor Moore.
So Taylor Moore is another one, and they actually practice at the same golf course.
I don't know where he practices, so I don't know who it is.
Will Zalatoris.
Oh, yeah. I just looked at his name for the first time. Man, Zalatoris is so interesting because he's so difficult to model right now because we don't know how much he's played through injury this season. He's had some really, really bad stretches of golf, and in fact, I think you could say he's still in that. But there have been two kind of patterns for him this season that have really concerned me. The first of which I think is the obvious one. We've talked a lot about it this year, that he has really lost a ton of distance, which I'm sure is injury related, and probably not just injury related, but we know he came into the season trying to swing differently, trying to put less stress on his back. So I think that's also probably a cause for some of the distance. Lately, though, an even larger issue has been that he's lost accuracy off the tee. But the reason I say he's so difficult to model right now is because I think most of the time he knows the advantage that he has lost with that distance off the tee, and he feels like he has to try and get it back. Now he's going to a course where distance really doesn't matter at all. So maybe he can just, go kind of cruise control off the tee, get some of that accuracy back. And if on Saturday he's leading the field in strokes gained, ball striking, are any of us going to be surprised? I don't think so. So I like the play, even though it goes totally against the model.
Yeah, I just think that he is strokes gained approach, accuracy. If he just can hone all of it in and just say, hey, I'm just going to start playing my game, I just think he's got a great point or a great chance to find his way back to a leaderboard where maybe he feels like there's a time that, he's 7,600, I think. In this field, if we were talking about this a year ago and we were like, hey, he's the highest priced, highest owned guy, would you have been surprised?
No, in fact, at this price, I would have been surprised if he wasn't the highest owned. But his game has fallen a long way. We've got him at 0.4% to win. He's priced at 100 to 1 is the best that I see available on both FanDuel and Caesars. I think the 100 to 1 is probably a fair price. I think he's more likely to win than our model is saying, but I don't think he's so much more likely to win that he's somebody that I want to run and bet. So kind of in between for me. As far as my outrights are concerned this week, I haven't made any yet, but there are a bunch who stand out in the projections. I want your thoughts on a lot of these guys because this is a week where we have a number of guys who kind of come to the forefront of guys that we would question if they have what it takes to win. Number one is Doug Ghim. We have Doug Ghim at 2.4% to win. So with that, we'd be looking at something like 40 to 1 is a fair price, and yet we can get Doug Ghim at 66 to 1. So lots of value if you think he can get it done. Personally, I think the answer then is to just say, you know what? One of the books that has the 66 to 1 available is Bet365, which means I can get that number in an each way. So even if I don't think he can get it done, there's so much value then on that each way that I'm almost certainly going to place that one as my first with Doug Ghim. And then the next two that I see value on, Johnny Vegas at 2.2%. and Kurt Kitayama at 2.8%. Let me see where those guys are right now. Kitayama is at 50 to 1, so 2.8% looks very strong. Johnny Vegas, if I recall correctly, yeah, he's available as high as 70 to 1. So Vegas, I think, is certainly one that I'm going to place in large part because that 70 is Bet365. So I get an each way. The second best number on Vegas is 66 at Bet Rivers, also an each way place. The third best drops all the way to 55 to 1. So that 70 number just seems entirely out of place. So I think for me, it's favorite bet is Vegas. Second favorite is probably Ghim. Third is Kitayama. What are your thoughts on those three?
I really like Doug Ghim. I think it falls down to the same thing you just said. Can he close? Can he win? Can he get it done? And I'm not sure. I have Spieth at 51 to 1. I'm not sure if those 15 points are worth. I would argue Ghim is probably a better player if you wanted to tell me tee to green right now, like everything going. But if you can give me 15 points less on a major champion that I know if he gets in contention can get it done, I'm probably going to go there.
Did you see Spieth's answer about his wrist this week?
I saw a little bit about it, but I didn't see the whole deal.
So the main thing that he said was number one, he doesn't feel pain in his wrist when he makes impact, even on firm surfaces. We're talking pitch shots, chip shots, iron shots. The around the green play, interestingly, was really, really good abroad. So at the Scottish Open, he gained over a full stroke per round with his short game. At the Open Championship, he gained a full stroke per round with his short game, which kind of is counterintuitive, right? Like, he's obviously played softer golf courses in America. The impact is going to have less of an effect. But the approach play, it seems to be turning a corner. Honestly, gained 1.6 at the U.S. Open, gained 0.4 at the John Deere, gained 0.4 again at the Open Championship, had a really bad irons week. The Scottish Open was pretty neutral at the Travelers, but that's a lot better than what the previous 2-3 months had been with his iron play. And he is still driving the ball really well, so I see signs of him coming around. I like the fact that he said he feels no pain. The one admittance that he did have was that he thinks subconsciously he might be, guarding against impact or fearing impact in some way. But I also kind of, in my own interpretation of what he said, I kind of think that he was using it as an explanation and not necessarily something that he totally believes. I think his exact words were something along the lines of, it's hard to say it's not true given his numbers this year. But his numbers over the last 5 weeks, or last 5 events at least, have been much, much better in his iron play. He's still driving it really well. The short game seems to be coming around. So I kind of think it's a nothing issue, even though he is planning, it seems, to get surgery at the end of the season.
Yeah, I just think if he was hurt, he wouldn't be playing, right? If he thought his career was in jeopardy, he wouldn't be playing. If he thought it was a real issue, he has plenty of money and plenty of status to not play. So,
especially now that the majors are over. Now, the one thing we can say there is, FedEx Cup, I'm sure he would still like to go to the FedEx Cup and make all of that money. So in that regard, it's not a surprise that he's still playing. He's 62nd in the FedEx Cup, by the way, so should make it, barring not just a disaster this week, but also he'd have to have a lot of guys behind him play well enough to catch him. So,
but I just think we talk about this a lot, being ahead of the curve on a guy. So if I can be ahead of the curve on a guy that's a winner, that we know that is going to go out there and compete and has a chance to shoot a really low score. And even if he doesn't play that, even if he doesn't finish top 3, he still can way exceed value on DraftKings.
So here, I think my big question for you on Spieth is, do you prefer him on DraftKings or do you prefer him in the outright market where he's 40-1? Some extra context there. At the first run, we think he's going to be around 10% owned at $9,500.
So I have him at 51-1, which is weird because we have this very seldom do I have a better number, but I think I prefer the 51-1 really at that. I mean, that's a really big outright on a guy that if he finds his way in contention, he might not win, but it's not because he's scared of the moment.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. Help me out here. I just placed the Vegas 70-1. I'm torn between Kitayama at 50, Doug Ghim at 66. There's no law saying I can't bet both of them, but I want to at least figure out in my own mind which of the two I prefer. Do you have a lean between Kitayama at 50 or Ghim at 66?
That's a very fair and hard question because we know Kitayama can win, but I think Ghim's a better player at a better price. So,
that's okay. So that's interesting. You think Ghim is the better player?
I do. I think Ghim is a better tee to green player than Kitayama. He's a better fit here in my mind, not necessarily stats, but just the way that they play and the expectations. But that being said, like I just said about Spieth, Kitayama is not going to be scared when it comes down the stretch on Sunday with 9 holes to play. He's going to go win and not play to not lose. I'm not sure Ghim has that in him. Or does it come back to the Schauffele major conversation of it's win, not if?
Okay, so a couple things here. First, in terms of who the better player is, this is a lot closer than I thought. In my mind, I was giving Kitayama more of an edge. In our expected strokes gained, we actually do give Ghim the advantage this week, 1.12 for Doug Ghim. By the way, let's let's recall an earlier point that Sungjae is first at 1.31, and we're talking about a $7,300 guy at 1.12. So really is condensed this week, which is why I want nothing to do with the top of the board in the betting market, but also why I'm going to go contrarian at the top, and certainly not play into any chalk at the top. But little side note there, Kitayama we have at 1.07 this week, so 0.05 apart. What I will say is that's very course fit driven because Kitayama, one of the longer players in the field, Doug Gim, one of the shorter players in the field. So overall, I would give Kitayama the edge as the better player. Where I think they really separate for me is Kitayama is the more volatile player, so I like his ceiling a little bit more. And remember, Kitayama outdueled an extremely talented field at Bay Hill. I know with certainty that he has what it takes to close out a win. I don't know that with Doug Gim, and we have seen Gim kind of struggle when in contention a couple times this year. As we often talk about, that doesn't mean that he can't get it done the next time. And in fact, sometimes the thing that is required for guys to get it done is they need to fail in the moment. They need to have that learning experience. So I'm by no means saying that Doug Gim can't get it done. I'm just saying I know that Kitayama can. So I think my gut is telling me to go with Kitayama, especially because on Bet365 we do have the profit boost, so I can just use that and get that number up. The other thing that's not sitting right with me on the Doug Gim bet is I don't think his number should be shorter than Johnny Vegas's. Again, I just placed Vegas at 70, so I then have a hard time going to Gim at a shorter number.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely understand and completely get where you're at. To me, it's just the skill set of Kitayama is not necessarily the skill set that is proven to win here. But we also know that sure, it's all about accuracy, but if this guy that hits it really far all of a sudden hits a lot of fairways, he's got a huge advantage.
And to that point, remember, Kitayama, like Johnny Vegas, even though he does gain off the tee, even though he does gain with his distance, he gains more with his accuracy. We've got him at 0.17 per round gained with driving distance, 0.38 with driving accuracy, and then one of the best iron players in the field at 0.6 gained per round, a slight edge over Gim at 0.57. So very little separation there. As you said, both of these guys, very good ball strikers. Again, I think I'm giving Kitayama a slight edge. One other guy I want to talk to you about outrights before we just dive into the rest of the DraftKings look at this week. CT Pan, he's projected well for us a couple weeks in a row now, and he's played pretty good golf for us. We've got him at 2% to win. And part of that is course fit. His three best attributes are accuracy off the tee, approach play, and he's got one of the best short games in this field. His biggest weakness by far is driving distance, which matters less this week than pretty much any other week on tour. So CT Pan, we've got him at 2% to win. He's available at 80 to 1. Do you like that as much, less than Doug Gim 66? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, it's a travel issue with me, right? Going to play the Olympics, representing your country, driving or flying all the way back. Where's his head at? He didn't intrigue me enough for it to be like, all right, I'm in on this guy. But I also, if you said, hey, I really like this guy this week, I wouldn't be surprised either.
He played really well the first 2 days, kind of struggled on the weekend. Man, his approach play was spectacular in round one. It was all around phenomenal in round two, had one of the best rounds of the day, and then pretty much lost across the board on day three and was neutral across the board on day four. So not a ton to take from last week. I don't think did end up finishing 18th. But like I said, he's just been playing pretty good golf. Man, that's kind of neck and neck for me between both Pan and Doug Gim. And honestly, I think they're both just a little bit shorter than I would want. I do see value on both without question. I'm not sure I see enough value to actually place those. You know what? There is one more guy I want to talk about because he's among the most volatile in the entire field. We've got him with a pretty good expected strokes gain number at 0.45, only $6,800 on DraftKings. So this can actually be kind of a dual DraftKings and outright bet discussion. What are your Nick Taylor thoughts? We've got him at 1.4% to win. And let's see. what is his number? I have a feeling it's even better. Yeah, 100-1 on Nick Taylor at 1.4%. So value there. What do you think of Taylor?
I'm a fan. I'm always a fan of Nick Taylor. He can absolutely ball strike it to death. So he's easy to root for. I was really, really hoping you were going to go to Naismith there because that's the really low price guy that I think they're out. Taylor's obviously won and Naismith hasn't, but they're the same, to me, the same type of player. I think that's a great call, especially in DraftKings when you look who's priced around him. To me, Nick Taylor is clearly the better player in that area.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the fact that he has lost strokes putting in 7 consecutive events. But remember, this is a guy who he won the Waste Management Phoenix Open because he gained 2.3 per round putting. He was one of the best putters in the world for a lot of the beginning part of this season. So I don't expect his putting woes to continue by any stretch of the imagination. So the fact that he's fallen all the way to 6,800 just because of that, I might say that I like him more on DraftKings though, because he does have the, slate winning type upside. But honestly, that also works for an outright bet. So I just kind of like Nick Taylor across the board this week, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Nick Taylor, Naismith was the other guy down in that I had circled. Mm-hmm. I glanced at Bud Cauley a little bit. I liked him a lot at the 3M Open. He played terrible. But if you believe he's healthy and distance doesn't matter, he might be somebody to look into because he's literally all about, is he 100%? We all know he had a pre-injury. I think that everybody thought he would be have a lot better career than he has had.
I've got a Bud Cauley take. I think that he is exhausted, and I think that he needs to just reset next year because when he came back, to your point, he's playing some really solid golf to start this season, and it just hasn't been the same ever since like the beginning of April. Miscut, 52nd, 61st miscut in his last 6 events after a very promising kind of restart to his career. So I think he's kind of just exhausted and his body needs a rest and a reset. But at the same time, maybe he's gotten that because he did take 3 weeks off between the John Deere Classic and the 3M Open and then got a full week off prior to this week. So maybe he's rested. I'm not sure, but I'm not totally feeling Bud Cauley anymore. I think there are enough guys down here that I like more, like Carson Young, just because of his driving accuracy.
Yeah, Bud Cauley is kind of that same skill set, I think, in my opinion. And so, and he also has that huge ceiling.
I think Naismith is a really good comp to Cauley, and I think he's a better player. He's certainly going to project better in our GPP scores. He's been a GPP score darling, by the way, over the last few months. So I love the Naismith call for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a huge upside, well-owned, huge upside, cheap. Like, he actually, I have a friend that his good friend caddies for him, and every once in a while he'll get a text and be like, "Hey, he's clicking this week, like he's hitting it good." So, nice. He's kind of got that upside value. Yeah, big fan. I haven't heard anything about him playing good recently or not, but yeah, it's just it's a weird deal because you got that sixes. Like you were saying, if you're going to stay away from the top of the board of chalkiness, you don't have to dive into the 6s much. So outside of Naismith and Taylor, I probably won't dabble much down there.
Another guy in this price range who really let people down as chalk at the 3M Open, but still projects quite well for us. Strong GPP score. Another really good week in terms of course fit is Chan Kim. So might be a good time. We ended up fading Chan Kim, even though he was an outright bet for us because of how popular he got at the 3M Open. Now everybody's off him again because he failed his chalk. Might be time to go right back to him. I'll tell you what, man, I'm pretty excited for this week. We've got a lot of options, guys, with some really strong GPP scores. Again, this is only the first run of ownership, so our ownership obviously gets a lot better as the week goes on. And some of these guys are going to gain steam and they're going to lose their status as a really good GPP score play, but some of them are going to continue to be really good. And I think one other thing I like is that we do at the moment have another kind of clear way to build at the top. Last week, we had those like three obvious guys to go to, or not last week. At the 3M Open, we had a very clear 1, 2, 3 start where there were only three guys over $8,000 with positive GPP scores. That made it really easy. At the moment, there are only three guys with really positive GPP scores over $8,000. Now, we do have Vegas with a really strong one and Kitayama with a really strong one at 8 and 7.9. We have a couple at like 1.0, Robert McIntyre, but Christian Bezadenhout 4.0 at 87, Brian Harman 4.5 at 9,300, and Billy Horschel looks like the clear spend up for us, 7.5 GPP score at 10,200. So we're not going to be able to use all of those guys. We are going to have to make a few decisions at the top, unlike we did at the 3M Open, but it definitely looks like a week where we're going to have some very straightforward builds, and we have options at every single price range, but very clear guys that the GPP scores are pointing to, which is what we like to see.
Yeah, but I mean, the only argument would be if you know that a guy plays better in certain weather and this weather becomes a factor. If it's going to be wet and the GPP score is at least mediocre on a guy like Shane Lowry, wind and wet and a lot of success here, then I'll probably go there. But if he's a huge, terrible GPP score, I'll probably stay away.
I was going to say bad news. He's at negative 49.5 at the moment. So he might not get one of those Lowry weeks in that regard. But great segue, because I do want to talk about whether what we're seeing right now is they're going to be affected by this hurricane. It looks like there's a very good chance Thursday is going to be a complete wash. We're seeing between 0.1 and 0.2 inches per hour of rain in the forecast all day long Thursday, including some lightning and some gusts of wind up to nearly 50 miles per hour. So if they do play, it's going to be fun to watch. We are going to see some carnage. My guess is we don't see guys on the course, though, until Friday. The start of Friday does look more difficult than the end of Friday. Not like it's going to be crazy, but we're starting with maybe a little bit of rain. Gusts near 30. Looks like sustained will be around 15. And then throughout the day, it falls to sustained will be under 10 and gusts under 20. So in that regard, maybe we'd have an advantage to the guys who are teeing off at the end of Friday, which would be the late Thursday tee times.
Yeah, I mean, something to pay attention to for sure. Yeah. There's not many times that outside of the British Open, I think, I was like, hey, I'm going to play this random lineup that CT Pan that you just talked about cost me all the money on. Mm-hmm. That I played in the smaller 200 single entry, which I still made money on, but it was all late early guys. Shoffley, I don't remember who, but it was mm-hmm. all late early guys that ended up doing pretty well outside of CT Pan. So, yeah, I'm not a huge weather guy, but if we get a little advantage, let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that we need to make the call on right now, right? Like we will be in Discord talking through all of that at the end of tomorrow night. So
we paid attention to that as players too. Like, don't think that they're not watching. Mm-hmm. Like everybody that's playing is, I'm getting screwed again this week, or hey, we got a chance this week.
Simultaneously hoping you don't get screwed, but also hoping that you just have a more pleasant experience on the golf course and you don't have to deal with umbrellas and all the rain and all that stuff. So definitely something we will want to look at, but we don't need to speculate on that anymore. But with that, let's turn our attention to underdogs, see if we can build a 3-pick play. And part of this conversation, I think, has to be the weather. Ideally, what we'll be able to do is set something up from a correlation perspective where we are getting a boosted payout, but if we're right about the weather, we're actually going to have positive correlation in our lineups.
Yeah, I think that's the weather is just so key for this that it's hard to build right now. But I think that, if we can correlate a couple of guys with morning tee times on what's supposed to be Thursday, right, to the over bogeys to under over bogeys with some over birdies for some late guys, I think we got a real chance.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So let's try and do exactly that. We can start with birdies. So we're looking for afternoon tee times here on Thursday as we look through this. We're presented right away. Oh, you know what? before we look at individual guys, I should mention these numbers. We see an average of 3.97 birdies or better per round at Sedgefield, 3.97, and then 2.66 bogeys or worse. So I think right off the bat, remember that's field average. We're getting a stronger field than usual this week, and we're being presented with numbers for some of the better players in the field. So I think these 3.5 numbers are kind of priced for the expectation that it's going to be more difficult if they're going to be playing in some really rough weather. So if we're right, and these afternoon guys don't see the course until Friday afternoon in lesser wind, soft conditions because of all the rain they will have just gotten, we're going to be set up pretty well on these higher birdies. So I think this is certainly my favorite place to start. And where I'm going to go first is one of the best players in the field, really strong course fit, Christian Bezuidenhout. Again, we have him at 1.4 expected strokes gained, so only 0.17 behind the leader. He's not a big birdie maker typically, but the reason for that is because one of the skills that leads to birdies is distance off the tee, which doesn't matter this week. He's very accurate off the tee, excellent putter, and I think his iron play is good enough that he's going to give himself chances to really convert. So I like Bez as the first pick here.
Well, I'm looking for his tee time.
12:21 p.m. Thursday. You might be able to see it on the screen. Is it too small for you?
Yeah, it's all right though. I've got it.
Let me blow this up a little bit.
12:21 doesn't. It's not even a.
It's not what?
Oh, never mind. I forgot you're Eastern. My bad.
Yeah. The early tee times are like 7:45 a.m. for example.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's actually the first tee time is 5:50 my time, 6:50 Eastern. Mm-hmm. So like an over McNeely, like these early guys, over bogeys for these. I mean, like that's a really bad tee time. My boy Naismith, unfortunately, some of these guys, Patrick Rogers, I don't know if they're all listed, but I was just looking at their tee time super early.
Yeah, and to that point, it's not just about the wind. It's also on Friday, the wind is going to go down throughout the day, and the temperature is going to go up. So if we're right about this, the afternoon is going to be probably half a stroke to a full stroke easier would be my guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure, like anybody that hasn't done this for a living doesn't understand, but I mean, my morning tee times, I would wake up 3 to 4 hours before I teed off. Mm-hmm. So if I'm teeing off at 6:50, you do the math. Yeah, I mean, I'm waking up about 3:30 in the morning. That's hard to train your body to do, right? I mean, even if you go to bed at 8, you're gonna lay there and watch the Olympics or whatever else is on, right? So it's just a different. I'm sure they'll go to the gym and they'll do all the things that they're supposed to do. That's just really hard to play golf that early.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you were kind of following along as I was scrolling through, but there are an awful lot of guys at 3.5, but there are a lot of them at 0.9x. The only other guy that I see at 3.5 in the afternoon, no diminished payout for going higher, is Thomas Dietrich. And I kind of like Thomas Dietrich for birdies. He is a good birdie maker, another great putter. So it's similar to Bez. It's like if he gives himself the opportunities, he's going to make putts. And he's not shining like crazy in the projections at 0.47 expected strokes gained per round, but he's just kind of solid all around. Gains 0.07 in both distance and accuracy off the tee, 0.11 with approach. His only weakness is around the green, less needed for making birdies. So I think my preferred start here is Bez and Thomas Dietrich, higher than 3.5 birdies, both of them teeing off in the afternoon.
Yeah, let's start there, and then let's go to bogeys and see what we can build. And, we're only looking for 3 here, and we might end up with 2 the other side. So,
yeah, and so let's get a reminder on the number. We get 2.66 bogeys or worse per round. So again, because these are the best players, like we kind of have to go to the 2.5, but I do think we definitely want to go with only one bogey pick, because I think without question, if we're right about the weather, the birdie picks are a lot better than any of these bogey picks. So we have to find somebody who just really fits what we're looking for in terms of, an early tee time and somebody who makes a bunch of bogeys. So first guy we see, Cam Young, 0.9x. He does make his fair share of bogeys, but I think we can do a little bit better than that. It's interesting. Like,
that you can tell underdog it thinks there's going to be a weather pattern here.
I mean, I think the obvious thing that they expect is for it to play tough. I think they're pricing guys as if they're playing on Thursday. So definite advantage if we are correct and they don't play on Thursday.
Yeah, no doubt. Davis Thompson 2.5 is interesting there.
You know what the ideal would be?
Jordan Spieth 2.5 is a bogey making machine.
Yeah, honestly, that might be where we go, even though he's 0.9x. One thing that could work out like extremely well in our favor is if these early Thursday guys do get on the golf course on Thursday. Maybe they can't finish the round. Maybe there's a long delay and they do complete the round, and then the Thursday afternoon guys are still playing on Friday. But there is a scenario where the guys that we're taking higher bogeys on end up playing in the really, really difficult, windy, wet conditions, and then our birdie picks skip that entirely and only play on Friday. So we could get really lucky, but I think this still is a strong build, even if all of the play is pushed to Friday.
Yeah, and I will promise I'll probably have a 5 over bogey pick of these 2.5 guys that I'll forget the boost, and I'm just gonna play a lot of the morning guys with more bogeys, and just taking the chance that they play 9 holes on Thursday, and it's just so hard that they can't help but make a bogey. So McIntyre over 2.5 bogeys there is really intriguing as well.
So he's afternoon, so I don't think we want to go to McIntyre. But
no, I'm just saying that just seems like an intriguing number. I agree.
Yeah. I do want to point out, it's easy to look at this and say, oh, is there really that much of a difference between, just the regular 1.0 and the 0.9x? So I do, for everyone's benefit, I want to just take a look at this real quick. So if we went with Spieth at 0.9x, we get a 5.51x payout. Whereas if we go to a base higher, it's 6.13x. So that is a very, very sizable payout. We're talking over $50 if you're placing 100 on this. So by no means should you think that those payouts are not meaningfully different. So I do think we want to find somebody without that, but it might be tough if like the only ones are, Justin Rose at 3.0, for example. I would much rather have Spieth at 2.5 than
Shane Lowry's at 2.5 in the morning.
He's the guy I want to discuss. What do you think of Lowry there?
I mean, Sung J M's 2.5 in the morning. Like, I think we're kind of. Well, is Aaron Rye at 2.5 in the morning? Like,
he's in the afternoon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Lowry's the one who stands out to me without question.
Batia, morning 2.5.
Morning 0.9x. I think if we're gonna go 0.9x, I think Spieth is the guy, honestly. But I kind of think it's Lowry. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at Lowry's projection. So Lowry's at 1.1 expected strokes gained. Good driving accuracy, good approach play, bad around the green and bad putter. So the nice thing about having Lowry is if you need him to miss a 6-foot putt to make a bogey, there's a good chance he's going to miss that 6-foot putt for bogey. So
he's just the problem is I know he's going to battle in the weather, and he might, unlike some of these other guys, he might just swallow his pride and make a bunch of pars and not. Does that make sense? Like, he's not
100%. Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. And to your point there, like I think he's one of those guys where if they do get caught in the Thursday weather, it matters less for him than most. But man,
I feel like that Davis Thompson
well,
at 0.9 is like a layup.
it,
Like, what am I missing there? He
well,
doesn't. I mean,
let me make this point first. Let me make this point first, then we'll talk more about Davis Thompson. Shane Lowry is 125th in bogey avoidance this year. He's 53rd in birdie or better. We have this like perception of Shane as somebody who scrambles and grinds it out. But the truth is, at least this year, because his short game has gotten a lot worse, he has made a lot of bogeys. That's a ton of bogeys for somebody who's at 2.5. So I think without question, Lowry is my choice here. And the reason for that is with Thompson, it's just that extra payout.
Yeah,
Thompson's at 0.9.
but I mean, he's not even like to put him in the same comparison of player as Shane Lowry is not even.
See, I don't agree with that though. I mean, we've got Davis Thompson at 1.11 expected strokes gain, Lowry at 1.10. Where they differ is that Lowry is more volatile. So I do think Lowry has the better ceiling. We give Lowry a 4.6% chance to win versus 3.6 for Thompson, for example. But Thompson is
I just
more
don't
accurate
want
off the tee.
the grinder fit for Davis Thompson. I just don't think he has that.
I see, but again, I disagree there. I mean, we've got Thompson as a third of a stroke per round better with his short game than Shane Lowry right now. So he's also the better putter. Like Thompson's game is strong all around. He gains in all 5 categories. Lowry gains in 2 categories, just accuracy and approach play. The difference between the two of them is that Lowry is a significantly better iron player, significantly better. But Lowry makes a ton of bogeys.
You would never give me Lowry versus Davis Thompson straight up this week.
You're right, I wouldn't, but that's not the question that's being presented.
It's the end game of what we're trying to get to.
No, the end game is just who's going to make 3 bogeys. That's it. That's all that matters.
Probably both. Literally, if they play Thursday, they're both making 3 bogeys.
Lowry's 125th in bogey avoidance. Davis Thompson is 36th. Now, part of that is because Lowry has played more difficult golf courses because he's played a more difficult schedule, more of the elevated events. But man, that's a really severe difference. Don't get me wrong. If they were both the 1.0 payout, if we were getting 6.13x on both of them, I would be taking Davis Thompson, not Shane Lowry. But I think their chances of making 3+ bogeys are so incredibly similar that we'd be fools not to take Lowry and get that better payout.
No, I think they're both going to make 3 bogeys. I think it's.
All right, let's do this. Let's make the official play this 3-pick right here with Shane Lowry. So let me zoom out for you guys. It is Christian Bezuidenhout, Thomas Dietrich higher than 3.5 birdies, with Shane Lowry higher than 2.5 bogeys. And then from there, let's extend this. Let's say, okay, what happens if we do get really lucky here and we get these early guys playing in the really difficult wave? And now let's throw in Davis Thompson and let's throw in Jordan Spieth.
I would throw a lot of them in there.
I mean, so that gives us 3. You want to turn this into an 8-pick play?
I'd throw Batia in there for sure.
Okay. So then let's go to birdies and let's find 2 more birdie guys in the afternoon. This might be a little bit tougher. A lot of early guys here. That's a terrible talking about why we love the Bez and Dietrich pick so much. Keegan is 4.0 at 0.9x, and we can get a win on 4 birdies from Bez and Dietrich.
Yeah,
we've got Bez as the better player.
Siwoo's a way better play there than Keegan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just using Keegan as an example of why I think that's such a good play. Yeah. So we could go to Siwoo at 0.9x. Man, how bad is this payout going to be? This might be totally unplayable, honestly. Is there anyone else in the afternoon that we can go to?
What was Hogard in the morning or afternoon?
Afternoon. Or morning, I mean, sorry. 7:12 a.m.
Yeah.
But let's say we put that in. It's only we'd be going from 80x all the way down to 34. So maybe we can do
they're not going together. It's just crazy they're not the plays aren't going together.
They changed the way the payout works. It used to be that we'd get this like really big boost from going 4 on one side, 4 on the other. And they basically said, no, we're going to make it less of a penalty than if you went 8 in one direction, but they're still viewing it more as like you have 4 correlated picks here and you have 4 correlated picks there, and we're going to penalize both of those. And you only get a little bit of it back because of the inverse correlation. So I kind of want to at least ditch. Who's your least favorite of the higher than 2.5 bogeys? For me, it would be Batia.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
Honestly, actually, it might be Thompson. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, they're both the same to me. I view them both the same.
Do you agree though that Spieth is better than both?
Well, yeah, Spieth's going to make more birdies and more bogeys.
I think I agree there. All right, let's take Thompson out, just because he's got a higher expected strokes gain than Batia. So if we did this, now we have 3 on each side. It still goes from 25x all the way down to 16. Now, part of that is because we have 1, 2, 3.9 x's in here. I have an idea. Let's take those out. Let's see what we have in strokes. Let's just go to strokes, because if we're right about it just playing really difficult, then we could still find something. And now you can see as I scroll through this, we've pretty much eliminated the 0.9x. So
Hogard over 70 stands out immediately.
Okay.
Horrible course fit. Morning tee time.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. All right, what else do we have here? So we now have Bez, Dietrich, Lowry, Højgaard. We need 1 more higher and 1 more lower. So lower would be in the afternoon. It could be Min Woo at 69.5. It could be Si Woo at 69. It could be Keegan at 70.
Min Woo is probably my favorite that I see there. Keith Mitchell, though, is intriguing.
I kind of think Horschel lower than 69.5. What do you think of that one?
Man, he's another one of those guys after the WD, after all that stuff. Like, I hate.
If you're scared of the WD, that's fine. We can go somewhere else.
You know what I'm saying? Like, after he WD'd last week and then blamed it on his back, was it really his back or was he just wore out? Like,
I think he was probably just worn out, but could be wrong. It's also been like there's been a lot of time since then.
Min Woo Lee is one of the most talented guys in the field.
Yeah, let me see what we have him projected.
Well, it's a horrible course fit, but he's got to hit a bunch of irons.
The course fit is so bad that I kind of don't want to touch that. We only have him at 0.11 expected strokes gained, so that's a full stroke worse than most of these guys.
But I would bet he hits a bunch of irons and not a bunch of drivers.
But drivers is his best skill set. He's even been accurate.
I agree. That's why it's a horrible course fit.
If he was in the afternoon, I think that he would be a good higher bogey pick or higher strokes pick. Or sorry, if he was in the morning, but he's in the afternoon, so we'd have to take a lower on him, and I don't really want to do that. All right, so I think our options then are we can go lower than 69 on Si Woo or lower than 69.5 on Horschel. My lean is Horschel, but if you want to go Si Woo.
If you think Horschel is healthy, I'm in on. I like that play if I thought he was healthy.
Okay, I do think he's probably fine. So let's go Horschel now. Another higher pick. We need a morning guy. Mav is one of the earliest rounds, so I think there's some merit to just going as early as possible.
I love over 70 with him playing at 6:50 in the morning.
All right, let's do that. So that's 6 pick. Look at that. So going to strokes takes us from, what was that, 16x to 21.5x. This is much, much better. So I think this is probably a really strong 6 pick. In fact, because now we're seeing some better odds, let's see what happens if we try to build this out to an 8-pick play. My guess is the 6 is going to be better. I think we're going to go far lower than 25 to 21.55. I think we're probably going to go from 80 to 65 or 70, something like that. But let's take a look. We might as well try it. So let's go. Do you think Siwoo lower than 69 is the move there?
I mean, that's probably the other one there. I mean, he's my. I think that if you had to tell me who's going to win this week, that's who I think is going to win. So
okay, then that seems like a pretty good pick to make if he's going to win. Higher, we can go Spieth 69.0. We could go Cam Davis 70.0. I think I probably prefer Spieth there. You can go Rose higher than 70.0.
Man, he played so freaking good at the Open.
He did. Poston higher than 70.0. Where's Poston in the projections? I could see Poston not projecting super well.
I actually don't mind over 68.5 Sungjae. Like,
we already have oh wait, no, we don't have Sungjae in there already. We have Lowry.
He's a morning tee time and over, like.
I will say I do like. I think oh boy, I don't know.
Sungjae in the morning.
We've got Poston at 0.13 expected strokes gain, so or 0.16. Sorry, but man, I do agree with you that Sungjae is pretty tempting at 68.5.
Even Cam Young at 69. Like that's
I like that one too. I think I like Cam Young 69 the most.
I mean, for that tee time, like either one, I like both of them over.
Okay, let's go Cam Young.
Oh my, 54.
54.8. Wait a minute. I think did we make a mistake? No, we did not. Okay, so 54.8x. That is a large decrease from 80x, which is the standard 8 pick payout. So I think the move is the 6 pick. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So
although that Cam Young play is very tempting.
I was going to say, do we like Cam Young higher than 69 more than Mab at 70 or Højgaard at 70?
Ooh. I don't know.
Where's Højgaard in the projections? That's probably a good thing to answer. Højgaard is at 0.35. Mav is at 0.76. And then Cam Young is at 0.76. So I think the move is to take Mav out.
Mav would be the one to take out.
Yeah. All right, let's do that. So now we've got a 6-pick play. So we have a 3-pick and a 6-pick. So for those who missed it already, the 3-pick is the first 3. Bez and Thomas Dietrich, higher than 3.5 birdies, with Shane Lowry, higher than 2.5 bogeys. The 6-pick then adds Højgaard, higher than 70, Cam Young, higher than 69, and Billy Horschel, lower than 69.5. We are building for the early wave on Thursday to be significantly more difficult than the afternoon wave. Anything else here before we get out of here?
No, and this is going to be fluent. If it changes, then it changes. Mm-hmm. We'll watch the weather, but as of now, it looks like this is the way to go.
And frankly, I'd say if you still have these available when you're watching this, place these as early as you can, because the closer we get to the start, if we're seeing the same weather patterns, Underdog is going to adjust. So
and it's got a chance to win even if it doesn't. Even if the weather doesn't hit, it's still got a really good chance of winning.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the final thing there is if the weather report does change, we will probably drop more plays into the Pick'em channel over at FTN Fantasy. So make sure you get in there. And final note, hey, it is NFL season. It's fantasy football season. We have a 15% discount right now. Check out any of our Twitters for that discount code. Got some really exciting new stuff for DFS this season in NFL, including we're getting a DVOA adjusted fantasy points against metric that's going to be spectacular. So make sure you are ready for the football season with us over at FTN Fantasy. And with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will catch you next time.